Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. And as Donald Trump distracts America by sending in first the National Guard, then the Marines, to deal with what was just a large, mostly peaceful protest before he stoked tensions, his real attention was this week surely focused on London, not Los Angeles. US and Chinese officials had been meeting to discuss another round of trade agreements as part of Trump's ongoing taco policy. But what exactly was he desperate to agree? And what has he conceded to China? But first, for daily news and politics, please hit the subscribe button to stay notified. So China basically had Trump over a barrel. A few days ago, the Orange One was talking about these upcoming talks with China in London in positive terms, saying he expected good agreements. What he particularly seemed to want with this week's talks, and desperately does not want the media to talk about, are rare earth metals. It's worth remembering that during the height of Trump's poorly thought out trade war with China, who had been preparing for this for the last decade, it wasn't just about tariffs and counter tariffs being raised to Dr. Evil levels of silliness. Amongst non-tariff measures, China put severe restrictions on the export of rare earth metals to the United States. Actually, to quite a lot of places. These exports have now been almost completely halted. Now, we often think of their use in microelectronics, and so Trump's tech bros will be none too pleased, but they're heavily used in the car industry as well. Trump has set himself up as the champion of the heavy manufacturing industry, with a particular focus on cars. Doesn't matter how hard he tries to force the manufacture of components to come to America, though, if they can't get the raw materials, they're not making anything. Trump either forgot or never realised that his industrial strategy was vulnerable to the supply lines of raw materials. He was given a very rude awakening last week when Ford had to announce a temporary shutdown in Chicago due to a lack of magnets. And China's really clamped down on the export of these particular magnets needed for use in modern cars. China has basically held the US car manufacturing sector to ransom in a way Trump wanted to do to China but failed. It's not an easy hold to break either. China has used its control of rare earth processing over other countries before. In theory, the USA and Europe could process our own, but we're not dependent on China for the rocks as such, just the processing. But it's a very nasty process which produces significant environmental harm because of all the chemicals used. So to carry out processing in either the USA or Europe would be expensive. It would come at a political cost. It would not be popular with locals at all. But this leaves China as not the sole producer, but in control of about 90% of the world's supply of the crucial materials needed for car manufacture and other industries crucial to Trump's industrial plans. This includes materials needed for the manufacture of, say, F-35 jets. In fact, a lot of high-tech military equipment needs the sort of materials China has almost completely blocks the export of. And not just to the USA. So there's no easy way for Trump to get around this. But we're now told a framework has been agreed, although details a little bit scant. The Americans are saying the agreement should unlock the export of rare earth minerals again. But what did they give in return? See, let me hazard a guess. So just as Trump is whining about China blocking export of rare earths, so China had complained about the USA blocking high-tech chips to China. Now, this wasn't Trump's policy. Biden implemented this export restriction for fear of their use in advanced Chinese military technology. Given that the USA increasingly sees China as its main military rival now, they didn't want to supply them with advanced technology. This means that if Trump has agreed to ease those export restrictions in return for the rare earths, he will have given China a real concession without getting one himself. Because before Trump started his trade war, remember, America was importing these rare earths from China, no problem. But China wasn't getting the chips it wanted. Up until yesterday, all that had happened in talks so far was both sides agreeing to dial down the measures and countermeasures applied since Trump came to power. Neither side had gained anything they didn't have at the start of this process. But trade, of course, remains worse off in most areas between the two. This would represent China getting a trade concession from Trump, which improves their access to US advanced chips, which Biden had worried would be used for military purposes, a concession they did not have at the start of this process. So Trump may have to risk supplying the Chinese military at a time when he believes China to be the main military threat to the USA, because he may have no choice. China had restricted rare earths before, but not to American companies as far as I can tell. So did Trump's outlandish tariffs force China to really go for it and press the red button? If so, it looks like it'll have paid off for China. They will certainly consider the risk worth taking if they do get access to those high-end US chips. And if this is the agreement which is reached, it would represent a serious blow to both Trump and the USA, even though he's unlikely to take political hits from it right now, because I can't imagine the tame media reporting it in these terms. But it will represent China getting something from Trump they didn't have before he started the trade war, but the USA won't be getting anything in return. It will just get access to the rare earths that it already had before the trade war started. We'll wait to see what's agreed in detail, but there will be a reason they're not releasing those details. That is what it's looking like to me. China has played Trump, and they'll gain something else as well. They'll gain the knowledge that they have serious firepower in any future trade war with America, whilst most of the rest of the world refuses to hold its nose and accept the cost of processing rare earth metals. Just another way in which Trump has weakened America's strength, literally surrendering to America's strategic opponents whilst he attacks his own citizens. But let me know what you think in the comments below, and for more content you could subscribe to the channel or join to become a member for access to streams and behind the scenes updates. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.